Our next speaker, final speaker for today, is Suha Nabhan, a strategic communications expert from Syria and Palestine. His work is focused on migration, social justice, and narratives. Co-founder of Migration Jam, a creative agency led by migrants, which attempts to change negative narratives of migration through storytelling. Suha.
First, I'd like to start with something I noticed that in Dublin they do a lot and say, "How are you?" I have to admit that as simple as this sound, it really touched me yesterday. It's the first time I ever come to Ireland and Dublin, and literally everyone was asking, even the border control. And when he said, "How are you?" I was like, is like something wrong? Like, what do you mean? Like, do I look stressed? Like, as someone come with my background, I was like, I was more stressed with how are you then? I thought we're staying here long. But then when I entered the city, I noticed how it's deeply rooted. And I just want to say how beautiful is that. I've been to many places where are you from is the first question, not how are you. So, kudos to you. I'd like to start with saying that today is Mother's Day in Syria and in many Arab countries. And I know that people like my friends here who gave their speech, I don't know if you are with your moms, but like I also want to give a minute to think about that, how many Syrian and Palestinian moms are struggling through the past years. I've always been connected with the stories. I think Brian is left, but like when he said, we're trying to understand why this strong narrative against migrants, who started this narrative and why is it copy-paste? Whenever I hear the narrative, it's usually very repetitive. They're coming here to take our jobs. They are the reason for the increase of rent. They are the reason of the issues we have in our neighborhood. So it's very repetitive everywhere. And I was like, do we have one specific migrant everywhere doing the same? Or who is like really promoting this narrative? I come from Syria and I'm from Palestine, but I've never been there. My mom never been there. But we come from Tira and Tantura. And it's unfortunate that also Tantura, which my grandparents told me about, got famous more because an Israeli director talked with the criminals who did the massacre in Tantura in the past years. And this movie made Tantura more important than the actual story of the people from Tantura. People across the globe were watching people who committed massacres, laughing and admitting their massacres and downsizing their massacre. And we were fine with that. And like that's really troubling me, how little we give space to the people who are living these atrocities, like to express themselves. And I was actually really troubled with this event because when I got invited, it was September last year. It was a few months before the fall of the Syrian regime. My life is very different before this regime and dictatorship fell and after is not the same. So I was really, I did like 10 or 12 slides before I come here and because everything is changing since December as well. And what I want to say about this and how narrative I created, I felt got affected as well. Before the fall of the regime, not just my life, I think my father's life was very different. He's 67 years old, never left Syria, only once to Lebanon to try to support Palestinians. Very, very rooted in his country and have done and still doing anything he can to document and talk to the people and create peace. I was very lucky to revisit Syria in January and meet my parents, which is still like something many people are unable to do, unfortunately. And before December, I was living with the reality that I will never, ever meet my parents. That was like the daily reality. Khalas, my mom and dad always also saying, live your life, forget about us. Maybe one day, maybe somehow we will meet, but probably not. So just go on with your life. That was our life before the fall of the regime. And after it, I wanted to go directly. My mom said, wait. And I managed to go in January for 2 weeks with my partner, whom they've never met as well. And he's Dutch, and like I was the translator in between. But like I couldn't understand why for the past 7 years I was like stuck, or 8 years, I was stuck with the reality. How is it possible that my parents who are still alive, away from me 2 hours, were unable to meet? Who created that narrative that banned me from seeing my parents and banned my parents from going out? So I wanted today to be like more of story engagement. I know you're already tired and it's also the end of the day, so I don't want to overwhelm you with the stories of the project. And I want to go on more about the background of my interest about storytelling, the impact of narratives, how it can ruin or fix people's life, and the role that actually art and museums can play. And for that, I'm really, really thankful for Hugh Lane Museum to really do a lot of effort to bring us all together and have these discussions and engage with you. I think that's my winning, to see more people and that we engage in these conversations and understand who is playing with our mind, who is creating this fear of other, who is making this stranger very dangerous without even meeting them. I lived 8 years in Turkey and now for 1.5 years in Germany. I left Syria because Syria was too dangerous. I left Turkey because Turkey became too dangerous for Syrians. And the moment I arrived to Germany, 2 weeks later, 7 October happened, and my Palestinian identity became too dangerous. And now, with the fall of the regime, I was too excited, and there was an unexplainable euphoria that I think millions of Syrians suddenly felt. And we were all going on with our life, and then suddenly we're all thinking about Syria. Something about this made me feel so, like, I thought there must be something good could come out of this, that millions of people were just going on with their life, and they're all right now focusing about their home and want to fix it and do something about it. But after the massacres that happened last week, and the amount of denial that people through the revolution for 14 years, people who know like that these things happen, but they don't want to admit that we could do it, it was so shocking. And that's what made me also troubled to come to this event. Because the last week, I think like this 5 or 6 hours are the first few hours in this week that I don't look at news or check with people who lost their loved ones for the past 10 days. This also made me see how narratives can really ruin people. At the end, it's a human who's killing a human. Everyone wants to say, not us. I think our friend today said, like, no one in this room is innocent. No one on the globe is innocent. And we always have to have the defense to say, no, it's impossible that we've done that. Because they are connected with this group and they think they relate to this group, and they don't want to believe that they could have done that. At the beginning of the revolution in 2011, I come also from the coast of Syria, where it's very pro-regime city. And I left in 2016, so I've lived like 5 years with people living in denial that we could never do that. It's impossible. They are terrorists. It's them. It's not us. And now, my fellow revolutionary friends and comrades are saying, no, it's impossible that it's us. They deserve it. So it's kind of weird after 14 years to be in the same position, but with a different group who thought they're fighting also. And that doesn't condemn the whole group, but I mean a lot of people from the revolution think like this. And that made me stop and focus about like what made them reach that point. I thought we're all fighting for justice, we're all fighting for these massacres to stop, not to say they've done it or we've done it. We want this to stop. Today we are a day 100+ day of the fall of the regime. And I'm not surprised that the globe is shaking a hand with the new leader, because the globe was ready to shake the hand with Bashar al-Assad last year. I mean, they were ready to they just want to send Syrian back. So whoever is there, let's close this file and send all of these Syrians. They clearly have made a lot of noise that we need to shut down. That's how it feels. In 2015, I was still in Tartus, and my brother was under the siege, under Eastern Ghouta siege. And he was a photographer and documenting what's happening there during the siege. I want to explain what even if you are in the situation, like even when I was in Syria and my brother was under siege and I am a pro-revolution, after 2 years of the siege, I was in his birthday, I thought like every year during the siege, in his birthday, we were gathering with our cake that my mom made or we bought, and we sent him a photo of that cake. That was what we were doing. We didn't know what to do. And in that birthday, I was like, enough with this, like 2 years sending him piece of cake, photos, like he can't eat, what can we do more? And I talked to his friend and I was like, what can we do for his birthday? He was like, well, do you want to give him a cake? We can give him money, we can bring meat, we can bring alcohol. I was like, screw his birthday, 2 years under siege. Why no one said we can do all of that? Like, I just realized like how little I know what is siege. My brother is there, I am in Damascus, I'm looking at that space bomb. So even when you're super connected, you really don't know. So I'm just trying to share this story to say like that we don't really, I don't blame people when they say I don't know, I really believe that. But then if we don't know, let's not jump into taking very strong stand or saying, no, we didn't do that or they didn't do that. Maybe say, I don't know. It's okay to say, I don't know, and it's a very, very hard thing for people from my culture to say, I don't know. You don't have to have a clear answer, you know, you don't have to know where you stand. It's okay to say, I don't know, it's confusing. I want to ask you before I dig deeper to close your eyes for a second and tell me what's the first image you see when you hear the word migration? Just like the first image in your mind. Anyone want to share?
The sea.
Sea. A boat. Birds. Sorry? Marmoration. Marmoration. That's beautiful. I'm asking this because also when I got interested about these projects, there was a study in Turkey. In 2018, I saw like a student in their research project, and every time I meet someone in Turkey, their first thing they say, and they think it's a complimentary, is like, you don't look like Syrians. I'm like, you know, this is not a compliment. And then but it was really rooted as well. And I try sometimes not to judge, I don't want to generalize, but when a question like this or a sentence like this is very repeated, something is happening and someone is creating. What image do you see? Who is the Syrian in your mind? And that researcher, I still thank her because she kind of gave me the answer. She studied 4 or 5 main magazines in Turkey. What are the images, how Syrians are presented? Thousands and thousands of images through the years from 2015 to 18, I think. And the results were crazy. Like, most of the images are a wave of people, a huge wave of people coming. So you're always thinking of like, they are coming, the Syrians are coming. Less than 10% is individuals. Less than 5% individuals and smiling. So for them, Syrians are a huge wave of people who are not individualized and they don't smile. And that's an image, like when I heard that, I was like, now I get it. Like, now I get why they say you don't look like, it's not just the answer is easier when we point, okay, because you're racist. I don't think that's the answer. Someone has created that image in their mind, so they can say this. And I tried all these years so I don't look at the world that, okay, they're just racist, or they're just ignorant, or they just don't want to do their homework. But also I noticed that this is also an easy, like I'm taking the easier route. So I can be angry of others and say, you didn't do your job. In 2015, when I learned that we can do more for the people in the siege, I started to talk with people in the siege to see how are they living? How do you wake up? Who do you talk to? Where do you go? I was like very obsessed with knowing what's your life like. And my brother is someone who don't talk much, so I had to talk with other people. I mean, he talk a lot in real life, but he wouldn't share what is siege like. And this is when me and a friend had the idea to start the project Humans of Syria. And it was a project from 2015 until 2018. We didn't announce its stop, but we kind of stopped after the forced evacuations. And through that time, we started from Eastern Ghouta. We grew to Daraya, Yarmouk camp, Halab, Hasake, Qamishlo. We went everywhere, and Daraa, and Homs, and many areas under siege. And we were documenting stories of people, stories of normal life. This is how I wake up. This is how I like to play football. This is the story of Aya that Nira Said documented. And Nira Said was also one of the reasons why I couldn't continue with this project, because he was arrested in 2015, and in 2018, I learned that he got killed under the torture in the prisons. In these stories, we noticed that people were just looking at Syria and feeling how complicated the news are, how big the numbers are, and it's just too hard to understand. And then I was so in love with the individuals that we were meeting. Abu Yassin, for example, he's in Eastern Ghouta, and he made this. They didn't have a siege they didn't have electricity or water or any means from 2013 until 2018, when at the end they were forcibly displaced. They were under bombs, they were under chemical attack, endless horrors. But this guy, like Abu Yassin, he collected pieces of mirrors and he created this machine to heat a cup of tea. And when the guys meet him, he was on the corner in 2015 and he was like, this is amazing. When in a sunny day, I can make tea in 5 minutes and I would like to have tea with you. These are the kind of stories that I wanted to connect. I didn't want to see Abu Yassin as just someone under siege. I feel like that takes the identity of the people away. And I'm sorry that maybe also I structured a bit more between personal and pro, so I don't feel like I want to tell you more about my CV as much as I want you to meet some of the people I've met and touched my life for the past years. Humans of Syria was a voluntary project because also during that time I felt that there was a flood of NGO coming to Syria that kind of sucked the soul of the people who were doing things for the revolution and that turned them to development sector workers. And in this project, we were so insisting, because actually all the photographers were willing to donate these photos because said no one in the media care about normal images and people in the streets. They just want bombs, destroyed buildings, people with blood. So they were willing to give us these photos for free. This is how we grew the team. We tell them the story, this is what we want to do. And we got the attention of the globe a lot because no one at that time was talking about Abu Yassin making tea in Ghouta. Some of the stories I remember, which I think these are the simple stories that matter. In that time, kids didn't eat fruit. So kids were, I remember one of the kids in the photos was afraid of banana. What is this banana? It's everywhere. It's in the books, it's in the painting, it's in when you learn letters. I don't understand, what is this banana? And then his mom was using this, but like, if you do this, I'll bring banana. It became like this monster. So fruit, it was very weird how like things became, and he was so afraid because also there's cartoons from banana. So he was really confused, what is this banana? Through the years, we did a lot of exhibitions. We connected with many Syrians. But it was 2018 when I couldn't continue with the project. After many of these areas got displaced, after many exhibitions and images that we've collected, and after I knew that Niraz died, and then also in that time, the Syrian regime announced in the civil department the death of tens of thousands. He asked the parents to come and check if their arrested kids and family members are alive or not. And you go there, and you either see alive or dead next to your kids and relative. And that was tens of thousands of people who knew at that time that their family members are dead. And what the world was covering is that Asma al-Assad have breast cancer. So that was the moment when, like, I know, like, I cannot continue to tell the world we are humans, because clearly they see us as aliens. And that's the same for me for Palestine. I feel like very strangely that we are trying to convince the world that they are humans, that they are not just numbers, that we've been watching for a year and a half died, that they are willing to have conversations about their death, and why it led to this situation, why we lost tens of thousands of children. But this is the first step. I think that every dictator and every occupation use, they try to dehumanize the victims. And this is what I try to resist, what I try to invite you. You don't have to feel, I know that pain is so hard when you think of tens of thousands of children dead. But you can at least connect with individuals. You can try to find one or two people in these areas that you would connect, learn about, and support. Through the past years, I learned that solidarity matters. I learned that people on the ground really, really, really appreciate it when you reach out and say, I hear you. Because that's sometimes, even if they don't win, they really, really believe that that matters when they see people hear them. So when we see that cut of the channel and we just talk about them as if they're not here, they don't exist, that's when the real pain hits, I think. In 2016, I moved to Turkey, and after a few years of this lost of how can we connect with the community, what can I do, we started a project named Migration Jam. My friend already started, and I joined. And it was a project to work with migrants. It's a full team of migrants all over the place. I also felt that I should go out from my own personal pain as a Syrian and Palestinian and learn about other struggles. Because we are not the only victims. And that's also a trap if you fall. Because also victims, when they are trapped in their own pain, they're unable to touch or believe the other pain. And that's dangerous. So when I heard the story, I actually talked more in Turkey about Afghan migrants than Syrians. Because if we want to talk about people who are marginalized groups, I thought that we need to go to the most who are hurt. And actually, in Turkey, that's Afghan migrants, not Syrians. But everyone talk about Syrians. I had a lot of arguments with Syrians in Europe because when Russia invaded Ukraine and there were a lot of Ukrainian migrants coming to Europe, Syrians were like, you see, Europe are racist, they are welcoming these people because they look more like them, da-da-da. And I was like, well, why do you think they welcomed you? Why do you think welcomed you more than Afghans and African? Why do you think Syrians this refugee crisis was created because of 700,000 Syrians on the border, and then you became #1. So when you are the most preferred victim, it's fine. There were many Syrians who left Afghanis behind them on the borders when it was snowing. I don't blame them. No one can say, no, can I bring my Afghani friend with me? Beside that, I'm not entering. Of course, they're fighting for their life. But I have these conversations so I can try to encourage each other that we are not the only victims. And I don't like to take that role also. I don't believe in the ultimate victim or the ultimate criminal. And that's also when people create that image about the occupation, although some of the things they've done were very merciful compared to what Assad regime done in Syria. I used to compare, like when my dad got arrested, I just compared, well, I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's alive or not for many months, while in Palestine, they have lawyers. Even the occupation was nicer, in a way, to their detainees than in Syria. And the moment I shared this, tens of people called me and they say, this will lead to the death of your father if you declare this information, because this is the ultimate enemy, and you're saying that they could be more merciful than this regime. I believe in respect and inclusivity, but not pettiness. And in the past years, migrants were welcomed in many spaces. But I also have seen that sometimes they were welcomed just because they're migrants. It doesn't matter of the quality of their work. And I'm not talking here. I can see the work you've done. So please, this spare Hugh Lane. But in many art spaces and in, like, I've been to concerts where, like, sometimes, like, okay, what is, like, the music that is played is really not cool. It's just because he's Syrian. Clearly they welcomed him. And that hurt a lot of artists, you know? There's a lot of Syrian artists that I know who don't want to do art anymore, because any art they are doing, it should be about migration, it should be about war, and, you know, and they are artists, they can be talking about other things. They don't want to be requested to be talking about their pain. I kept these questions so we can think about it. I know we are all tired, so we won't have the answers today. I had a bit ambitious conversation to have. But especially, who has the power to choose which voices can be heard? I really thank you for inviting me here, because I do believe in the past years, I grew the interest in the role that art and culture institutions can play. Museums and galleries all over the globe are kind of protected, still, in a way, from governments. But still, in a way, they are kind of protected and have the spaces, have the power to invite and be more inclusive. And not everyone is choosing to do that. But they do choose who come, and they do choose which stories are told. And I'm more interested because I do see that the impact of art and culture, I think, and I believe it's a long-lasting impact. That's why I like to see more of that. Maybe a research is helpful here and there and now, but I think when you see an art piece, it really, for me, it really touched my soul, and if it really can change something fundamental about how I see things, and also give us a lot of tools to do so. Is art received differently based on the artist's background? I don't know if any of you have a question about that, like an answer to this. Like, if you look at the piece of art, and then I tell you it was painted by Hitler, would you get affected? If I tell you it was painted by a migrant child, how would you change how you see it? I think that's, for me, a very complicated also question and corner. Like, do we look at art as art, or it depends who did this art? And how do we treat people who are doing this art differently because of where they come from? Do we praise them more while we shouldn't? And do we hear them less when we should? There's a lot of questions there for me. And I don't know if any of you want to share. I'd like it to be more engaging, not just me. So feel free to share if you have any. I wanted to share some of the examples that for me were like art pieces that changed the narrative. And in this one, we're looking at Tammam Azzam piece of art, where he painted The Kiss, the painting of Gustav Klimt, on a destroyed building in Syria. And this artwork became very popular and raised a lot of questions about the destruction and of the buildings in Syria, although many photographers were covering what's happening. But when this piece of art that is known by Klimt was put on these buildings, it catch the attraction. And today, I would like to invite you all to look at Maysara Baroud work. Maysara is an artist who is right now in Gaza, and he didn't stop painting. He's still painting for a year and a half, and every time he paints and shares something, he just writes, "I'm still alive." There's hundreds of paintings there for Maysara that maybe or maybe not could change how you see what's happening in Gaza. But I wanted to think about Maysara today. I don't know him, I never met him, but I was really touched by his work that he continued to do and how he used art through a genocide to share his experience with us. To be honest, what I'm written here is different from what I'm saying, because when I know that you're all tired, so I didn't feel like sharing with you all what we've done in Turkey. I'd like to share with you some of the stories, or projects that I know, or watched and touched me, and invite you also to see them. There is a movie called The Story Won't Die. And this is a movie that you can all watch online. It's about 11 to 12 Syrian artists in Europe. And one of the stories is about an artist who was with a music band called Khibz Dawleh. And when I was still in Syria, this band was really a model for me. Or I don't know, it's something they've done was so crazy is that they released their first album on the shores of Greece. So they took their albums, they never released it, and they had to smuggle. And when they arrived to Greece, they didn't want to be that victim. Also, people are tired of being received as that kind of victim. So they were like, no, we're superstars. And they were spreading their first album on the shores of Greece. In 3 or 4 years ago, I was a resident in Taha studio in Istanbul for a few months, and we were part of Istanbul Biennale, which the image you see first. And the other two images are from Venice Biennale, when we did a workshop in Palazzo Grassi about migration narratives and how are they created. I was really appreciating to see more and more of these spaces of art and culture institution welcoming voices of migrants and encouraging critical conversations about migration, about art and culture institution, and who's making the decision, and the importance of solidarity. One of the themes that really also affected me were Clowns Without Borders. 2 years ago, when the earthquake happened, I was leading their tour in Istanbul and in the camps south of Turkey. At that point, I was living in Turkey for 5 to 6 years. I'm a Syrian myself. And again, how when my brother was under siege, I've never been in a camp. I've seen camps and images, I've heard about it, I'm recording stories from there, but I really never saw one, and I never spent a day in a camp in a tent. So when we went there, it was really touching for me to be confronted with it also, and where Syrians and Turkish were in camps because of the earthquake. And what you see here with the hand, that was the moment these clowns really took me out of my laptop where I'm working and took me to the ground where the people are and showed me the importance of imagination. What this clown is doing here is that she was doing she had a bag and she created a ball, an imaginary ball, and she threw it to the kids and then they throw it back. In 2 minutes, kids are really brilliant. In 2 minutes, everyone was playing with imaginary balls. Were shouting, throw it to me, give it to me. They didn't need instruments, they didn't need tools. The whole camp was playing. And at the end of the show, she didn't notice, but she grabbed this bag and she threw it behind the tent. All the kids went there. They were like, this is the bag that has the imaginary ball. And he was throwing and giving to everyone. Take more. And this hand was for me, the reminder of the importance of imagination. Because through all these years, living through these pains and receiving all these war news, also the imaginations, the children imagination inside me, I felt like I wasn't connected with it. And this moment, and when the children were playing with imaginary ball, I really wanted to play with them, and I wanted to be that child who still have that level of imagination. And the clowns made me feel that it's possible. Clowns Without Border is a group that goes to areas of conflict and play with them. And before, I felt like disconnected with that reality. Like, what does that mean, like to go and laugh with someone during crisis? But when I saw them live, when I saw myself running around, and how people, and women and men especially, I really love how they make men play like kids, because especially men take themselves so serious. And they make them like kids playing around. So that was really nice moment to reconnect with imagination. This is a moment where, before the Russian intervention in Syria, rain was something to celebrate because the Syrians' armies, warplane, were unable to bomb when it's raining. So until 2015, when it rains, like this moment, people go to streets and they dance and they laugh because now we're not going to be bombed. And the first round of Russian bombs, people didn't really believe they were in the streets, and they thought that's a thunder. Because until that moment, it was impossible before the Russian intervention to get bombed when it's raining. So it was still a moment when rain was a peaceful thing that could save you from bombing. Daraya, one of the stories in Daraya that really, really changed my life when I was still in Syria was the story of 10 young guys when they were still under siege. In 2015, I heard that story, but they were working on it 2014 and 15. And you can find, by now, there are books and movies about it. It's called The Secret Library of Daraya. These 10 guys or more were collecting books from under the rubbles, and they created an underground library with more than 10,000 books. For me, that was fascinating. But the additional info that I knew from the team when I talk about them make me like, whoa, you are like the actual definition of heroes. These guys were sitting every night with whatever left with their laptop to document the names and the areas, the names of the books and the areas where they collected. Because this is how, and for me, this is what is transitional justice and how the mindset they had. This is something we need to work on in Syria. They were thinking, when the regime fall, if someone come and say, well, these are my books, we can look at documents and say, yes, you're right, and if you want, you can take your books or keep them donated to the library. This is the mindset they were like, even saying that give me goosebumps. You're under bomb, not just you create a secret library, you're thinking of when the regime fall, how to be rightful and act with justice. And that's what I wish for Syria today, guys like this to be contributing to the transitional justice. Thank you.